We've all heard that perfect snare sound. A sound with beef, crack and resonance. You can be fooled into thinking you need a 400, 500, 600 pound or more snare drum just to sound like the pros. But with Evans' new TuneUp kit, you can turn your snare into a leading musical instrument. I'm here with Ben from Didario to talk us through it. We want to break it down to the bare essentials. So the heads are off, the lugs are off, and the rims are off, and the wires are off. To get this down, there is certain ways to get it down correctly, and Ben's going to demonstrate that for us now.
So the first part of the process is uninstalling the snare wires. I'll start on the strainer side of the drum. So this is the mechanical part where we can turn the wires on or off. Now there's two square head drum key bolts here, and we will just undo those simply with the included drum key on this side, and then on the butt plate on the other side of the drum, we just undo those as well. Really simple. And we'll just remove the wires. Keep the wire flat in case you do want a spare. It's always good to have a couple of spares on hand. Next, we need to detension or detune the drum. So we need to pick a starting lug point. Generally, we'll number these lugs 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got opposite lugs, and then you can go 5, 6, 7, 8. The reason that we want to number them in our head is so we take the tension out of the head equally. If we were to completely detune this tension rod over here, and then the one next to that, the one next to that, the drum starts to kind of pull itself out of true. There is potential that you can damage the hoop, bend the hoop, or indeed you can kind of blow out the shell with the tension rods if you've got tension over one side of the drum and not over the other. So the reason that we number the tension rods 1, and then the opposite 2, the opposite 3, the opposite 4, is to remove that tension equally around the drum.
Lift as one.
Exactly, and that just means that we're not going to risk any damage to the shell by having tension over this side and not over the other side.
And is this a problem that is in wooden shells and metal shells?
It can be in both. It depends on the thickness of the material.
Okay.
So I have seen drums where they have collapsed, where they've had too much tension on one side or the other. So this can happen. Often it will happen when people are tensioning drums up, but equally it can happen when you're taking tension out of the head as well. Okay. So it's quite important that we just take that tension out of the drum equally, just not to stress anything out. And again, with a metal shell, although they are sturdier, you know, there is the potential to bend those shells in as well. So you've got to be a little bit mindful. But if you follow this process, it's very, very simple, and it just gets you in good practice. And this can be applied on any drum across the drum kit as well. So whether you're tuning toms, bass drums, or snare drums. Okay. The reason it's really critical on snare drum is the heads are at much higher tension than you will find on other elements of the kit. So
especially the resonant.
This is it. You kind of want this. Often it'll be referred to as tabletop tight. You want a nice amount of tension in there to ensure that drum head is going to activate the wires, but we'll get onto that when we get into the tuning part. So let's detune. So usually I'll start with a half turn on the drum key, and then I'll move over to that lug number 2, half turn on that, lug number 3, half turn on that, lug number 4, half turn on that, lug number 5, lug number 6, all half turns, lug number 7, and lug number 8. So we can already feel the tensions come out of that. At this point, repeat the process. So another half turn, another half turn.
And you'll do this until you feel the lugs are at the point where you can finger loosen them?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where the drum head was set and where the tension was already on the rods. But generally a half turn, and then a half turn again, so one full turn in total, will bring it to a point where the tension rods are pretty much loose enough to then take them off with our fingers. So we can set the tool aside, and we can start to remove the tension rods this way. Like I said, because we've done that systematically using opposite tension rods, we know that we've taken the tension out completely equally across the drum, and we've got no danger of damaging any of the hardware or bending any of the hoops. What I'll do, I'll remove the tension rods out of the counter hoop, and usefully, as you pointed out, Myles, we've got this little temporary storage unit here. This little box just allows you to place all your tension rods in there without them rolling across the floor and never to be seen again.
Won't lose a thing.
Yeah, exactly. But it also gives you an opportunity to check the threads, make sure that there's no debris within the thread itself. And that's the reason why we also have the lubricant, the metal polish as well, so we can clean anything up that may inhibit when we come to tune and tension. Right. So I'm just going to remove the counter hoop, just on there, and then remove the old head. So now we have the shell exposed. We've got the bearing edge here. Now this is a critical point of the process, is just to check the bearing edge, just to make sure that there's no dents or splits if we're talking about a wood shell within the plies. If you have any sort of debris caught on there and you place a drum head and try to tension it up again, obviously that's really going to affect the way that that head tensions up and resonates as well. It's even more important on the snare side of the drum because that head is much, much thinner. So if you've got a sharp piece of, like, it could be drumstick debris underneath the bearing edge and you tension the head, it could potentially pierce it and then, you know, a split will occur.
And we know that gets everywhere. Drumsticks get everywhere.
Nobody knows how it gets in the drum, but it does.
Sometimes you don't question it.
Exactly. So what we need to do is same process. We'll flip that over. Now we've inspected the bearing edge on this side. We've removed the wires. We've removed the snare side head. I'm going to use the same process to remove the batter head. So we're going to pick a starting point. We're going to number the lugs and tension rods 1, 2, 3, 4 to start with. And we're going to take out a half turn from each of these tension rods. Same process as the snare side head. And again, we go 5.
I think that tension is very important with the wooden shells. It is a natural fibre wood. It's not going to be able to withstand an unnatural change in tension or pressure from one side. It is something that needs to move and be a bit flexible.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I've got to be more mindful, especially on thinner wood shells, is they don't have that much kind of lateral rigidity. You know, they're built to take tension kind of vertically like this. Whereas if we start pulling tension that way, that's when you can potentially put pressure in, and basically split the plies up. It's usually around where the lug point is that, you know, will cause damage on the shell. But again, just using this process, just taking the half turns out, means that we've taken the pressure off very equally from the drum, and then we can just finger tight as well. So because I've done this so many times, it almost becomes automatic. So we're talking away here and I'm, you know, taking them out. You'll hear a lot of drummers talking about, oh, I just do it by feel, you know, and yes, a lot of people will tune drums, they'll detension and retension drums by using feel, but that's only because they've done it and they're very familiar with their instrument. For us two here, these are kind of new snare drums for me and you. So we're kind of we're
in a similar position
going on, but we're using a process, we're using a method which is, you know, it's kind of prescribed turns. So
I think with tuning as well, it's people will only tune once every year sometimes if they're not gigging a lot or if you're not performing or recording a lot. You put your heads on and you leave them. And then when it comes to tuning, it's a massive ordeal that seems to be daunting. But if you just take a snare, take an hour out of your day, and you could tune and retune a snare 3 times in an hour, and you've done it 2 times more than you would have before. You do that once a month, and you're doing it in double digits throughout the year, and then before you know it, it will become, as the pros say, the feel of doing something again and again.
That's it. And you know, the first time you do it, it's always going to be alien. Whatever we're talking about, it could be tuning drums, it could be restringing a guitar. But you're right, the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. I think a lot of drummers fear losing the sound, so they become so comfortable with the sound on a drum. What happens is you become fearful that you'll never be able to get that sound back again, you know, and drummers will go, oh, well, I've had the head on for a while, I've played the drum head in. If the drum head's missing the coating, you know, you can see on this head, it's been used a little, that's never going to be the same sound as out the box factory fresh. So, you know, it's one of those things you've got to kind of take that leap out of your comfort zone of the sound that you're used to. Put a fresh head on and you will notice sonically the difference. Your ears might not be used to it, but it will certainly be brighter, louder,
night and day.
You know, more tone to it. And I think drummers become used to a sound as it deteriorates as well.
Because it will be gradual. So you end up thinking this is how it's always sounded.
Yeah, it happens over a long period of time. Whereas if you liken it again to guitar strings are very bright out the packet. They tend to mellow out and then they fall off a cliff. At that point, guitarists go, right, it's time to change. With drum heads, that happens over a much longer period of time. So it's being kind of a little bit more regimental in making sure that you do change your head more often. And like I said, a lot of drummers they'll kind of avoid changing heads just because they've got the drum in the comfort zone, the ears are used to it.
You understand certain points.
Exactly, so they don't want to lose that sound. But you know what, the best thing to do with a drum is keep your heads fresh because they're producing most of the sound, regardless of what level of drum it is. If you take a drum without a drum head, it doesn't make a sound, you know. So the drum head's a pretty critical thing. So again, same as car tires. Why would you leave a slick car tire that's worn out on your car? It becomes dangerous. Now it's not as serious as this, you know. Changing your drum heads, but it really is critical to sound. So you know, I think getting into the process of changing your drum heads over periodically. It is often a question that drummers will ask is how often do I change my heads? And it depends on how often you play your kit. You know, you might play your kit once every 3 months live. So you're probably not going to have to change your heads that often. But if you play 3 gigs a week, you know, you're probably going to want to change your heads every 2 months, you know, if not more. It is very personal from drummer to drummer, so there's no like definitive answer on this. But
I think we're all guilty of sometimes leaving it a bit too long. It's not an exact science, drum tuning and head changing, but it does. Once you do it, you realise how important the heads actually are to your sound.
Yeah, and I think as well, if you've got the ability to, you know, record your drum when you've freshly changed the heads, and you can go and look back at that fresh out the box sound and compare it 3 months down the line with the same head that's stretched in, you know, you'll probably find that your preferred sound is the newer head. But again, that's all up for debate as well. You know, some people will have a vintage drum that's got a 30-year-old head on it and
it would just be...
It sounds great, you know, so... But in my opinion, modern drums, fresh heads, there's nothing better. So we've done the inspection of the shells, like I said, checking the bearing edges. What you want to do as well is check the counter hoop of the drum. And at this point, this is where we can employ the polish cloth, just to make sure that any dust, debris is removed from the shell.
All the finger marks as well on a metal drum.
Well, this is it. So if it was kind of heavily soiled, then you would probably want to use the metal polish, which comes in this handy little sachet within there. And there is some instructions on the back as well. So you've really got to apply this during the kind of disassembled stage, because you can get in to all the lug boxes. You can also get on the inside of the counter hoop as well. So this is usually where a lot of stick debris splinters will live and reside.
Oh, it's all over my carpet.
But yeah, just an opportunity to give your snare drum a bit of love. Like we said, there's nothing better than sitting at a kit and it's looking kind of spangly and new. So
great. I think I'm all clean.
Good to go. Fantastic.
If you found this video useful and you can see yourself using these tips on your snare drum, then please like and subscribe to the Gift Music Drums YouTube channel. I've been Myles and this has been Ben from Evans. Thank you for watching.